Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Chung Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Korea Pro podcast. It is now Thursday, January 9th. It is a little after 5:30 p.m. And as usual, there's never a boring day in South Korea. Chungmin, you've been on top of everything. Could you start us off, please?
Well, let's start with non-impeachment related news to kick us off. It looks like there were some trade and economics related developments. But before going to that, how's the currency right now?
The South Korean won has recovered somewhat. At its lowest, it went up to 1471 to the US dollar. The last time I checked, which was yesterday, so it's a bit dated now, it was nearly 1450. So it had somewhat improved. But that's because a lot of foreign investors have been buying South Korean assets because of the downturn in the currency. But we're not quite sure if it will go back to the 1300, much less the 1200 range anytime soon.
So no timeline on when this will actually stabilize.
Well, it's not just a political instability going on. It's also because of Trump coming into office.
Right.
There are a lot of concerns about tariffs. There are also concerns about what kinds of policies, fiscal policies, Donald Trump will try to pursue, which might impact the US dollar and the different bond markets. And so there are a lot of uncertainties still in the financial markets.
To a little bit more exciting news, I saw this news about nuclear energy exports related.
Yeah, there was a memorandum of understanding signed between South Korea and the U.S. just today, and it has to do with nuclear power exports. As those of you who have been paying attention, South Korean nuclear exports have largely been thwarted by the U.S. company Westinghouse Electric, which has sued the South Korean government and KEPCO for supposedly violating Westinghouse Electric's proprietary designs. And so this MOU is supposed to get the U.S. and South Korea on the same page regarding intellectual property and exporting of nuclear energy. But again, this is just a memorandum of understanding, which means that it is not legally binding. And
so what happens when Trump comes in?
Well, that's the thing. Because it's not legally binding, neither government, especially in this case the U.S., is really obligated to follow through with this. Now, it could lead to some friction between the two countries, but when is there ever no friction between these two countries? And Donald Trump is much more willing to instigate friction between the two countries, so we also have to wait and see.
All right. And let's move on to non-trade and economy news. And actually, let's just briefly touch on whatever is going on with the insurrection charges or not, or the impeachment and the special counsels as well. What's going on at the National Assembly, Junha?
Yeah, so just today, the 6 opposition parties, they introduced a revised bill to launch the special counsel probe into the impeached president's December 3rd martial law. It was reintroduced one day after the bill's failure to pass the National Assembly floor due to the ruling party's opposition. It was only short by 2 votes. And the key changes are that the special prosecutor candidates are to be recommended by the Supreme Court Justice instead of the opposition party. They added charges against President Yoon for foreign aggression or instigating foreign aggression.
Instigating foreign aggression, can you walk us through it?
Yeah, so instigating foreign aggression, so Yoon and also the aides that were involved in the martial law.
Like the then Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun?
Then Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, and also former Defensive Intelligence Commander No Sang-won, who turned into a shaman.
The Loteria guy?
Yes, and what was found in his notebook was that he wrote, and prosecutors later announced that he was trying to instigate some military tension at the NLL, the Northern Limit Line, the inter-Korean sea border.
Yeah. What's that called?
To provoke a response, a physical altercation.
Provoke a provocation.
Provoke a provocation by the North Koreans along the NLL, which is the maritime border between South and North Korea.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's also talks of the Yoon administration, the defense aides, Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun ordering the drone incursion into Pyongyang. It's still alleged, but there's still investigations that need to go on.
So they are, on those grounds, they are now adding, they already added in the reintroduced bill that Yoon was involved directly in instigating. I see. Would this make a change? Any changes though?
Well, they did remove the veto clause, allowing the opposition to reject the candidates for a special prosecutor bill.
So does that mean that the opposition cannot reject them or they can reject them?
They can reject
Okay.
candidates. So also, they made quite a few adjustments to sort of tame the PPP's opposition. However, whether the PPP actually accepts these adjustments going forward, it's still something that needs to be seen.
PPP hasn't been really accepting or adjusting at all recently. And reminder for our listeners, although sitting presidents are immune from most of the criminal cases, aside from two things. The first one being the crime of insurrection, and the second one being the foreign aggression. So it looks like they want to sort of expand a little bit when it comes to what they see as the charges for Yoon. But let's also move on to non-domestic news. There's a lot going on the U.S.-South Korea front right now, including Blinken visited this week.
Antony Blinken was in South Korea for a day where he met with the key players. He met with the acting president, Choi Sang-mok. He met with the foreign minister, Cho Tae-yul, and he also met with the National Assembly Speaker, Won-sik. It was notable because when he came to South Korea, he, as usual, being a diplomat, he said that the alliance is ironclad. But during a press conference, a South Korean journalist asked him rather pointedly as to whether or not the alliance was ironclad, considering what's been going on with the martial law attempt and everything else. And very briefly, Blinken did say that, quote unquote, they were concerned about some of the actions that Mr. Yoon had taken. That was a phrase that they used. But he largely sidestepped any deeper criticisms of what has been going on in South Korea. Of course, he's a diplomat, so it would be very awkward and odd had he actually said something that was very critical out in public. But the question is, did he at least express some of these concerns behind closed doors? We will never really know. But the fact that he just went on and said that the alliance is still ironclad, it's a bit tone deaf.
Yeah, and you wrote an interesting column about that, I believe.
Yeah, South Korea's alliance with the U.S., it's not just about shared interests. Yes, there are shared interests, but there are also shared values.
Of course.
And the entire narrative between South and North Korea has always been that South Korea is the democratic country, is the country where people respect freedom and the rule of law. But when the South Korean president tries to instigate an auto coup, and when there are all these allegations that there were false flag military operations trying to justify martial law, which could have significantly impacted American lives, those that are stationed here in Korea, this leads to a lot of concerns that people should be talking about much more. Not just us in the media, but people in the government as well, those who are actually making real decisions. But so far, we have not seen that happening in either Seoul or Washington.
Any thoughts, Junha?
I think that, when you look at the whole emphasis on the ironclad alliance that keeps on going on, especially with Blinken's visit that came just a few days ago, and when he was doing the press conference with Foreign Minister Cho, he was being asked and being grilled on his government's position on Yoon's instigation of martial law and also the impeachment process that was going on in...
quite detailed questions.
Yeah, detailed questions. And he seemed to be evading those questions as much as possible, possibly because he's an outgoing minister as well. But at the same time, when you are a distinctive ally and a friend for over 70 years for a country that you have helped defend, it's something that I think good alliances also to be good frank with each other. So going forward, I hope to see that.
I do understand that for diplomats, especially like Secretary of State, for instance, they have to be careful with wordings that could be understood by some liberals here even. Although liberals all want to impeach Yoon and media, they might be sometimes interpreted as 주권 내정 간섭, just the sovereignty, invasion of sovereignty. So I think that's why they sometimes tend to do like that. But I certainly agree that at least behind closed doors, I hope they were more than just frank. And moving on, last topic, Goldberg. Ambassador Goldberg has already left.
Ambassador Philip Goldberg left apparently a day after Antony Blinken's visit. It was not entirely unexpected. The ambassador had been making a farewell tour by visiting a lot of high-ranking officials and talking about his time here. I think he was here for a little over 2 years as ambassador. But the day he left without much fanfare. It was very quick and sudden, suddenly.
So who's the replacement right now?
Right now, there is no ambassador, but the U.S. did appoint Joseph Yoon as a charge d'affaires. But from what I hear, he will not be here for very long.
Well, the inauguration is January 20th. We only have 11 days left, 10 days left when you are listening to this. So I guess that might be a very, very short tenure.
Well, while he's here, I'm sure that he can do some sightseeing, though it's a bit cold for that.
Yeah.
Korea Pro, your definitive business intelligence resource for all things South Korea. Subscribe to our daily executive briefing on the most pressing issue of the day and a summary of key Korean and international news. Benefit from our analysts' original perspective on South Korea's economy, politics, security and society. The Monday Week Ahead newsletter helps you stay ahead of the curve for upcoming business and political events. Need to catch up? Our weekly podcast recaps recent developments. Trusted by leading corporations, government agencies and research institutions, Korea Pro delivers essential business intelligence daily. Stay ahead in South Korea's rapidly evolving environment. Visit koreapro.org/podcast. Korea Pro, never be sidelined again.
And week ahead, usually every year when there is not martial law, there are press conferences, New Year press conferences in the second and third week of January by lawmakers and also business leaders as well. But I'm not sure if the schedule is that packed compared to last year. Also, this marks, I believe, almost a year after Democratic Party leader was almost assassinated.
That was January 2nd or the 3rd of last year when...
January 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah.
So it's more than a year, but thankfully something like that has not happened this year. Although throughout the week, there were so many online postings that police had to just chase after.
Not just against Lee Jae-myung, but also against ruling party lawmakers.
Everybody.
There are just way too many people with a lot of free time on their hands with access to the internet.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. And lastly, although this is not technically next week, we will see throughout the week who will be going, invited and going to Trump's big inauguration. And not just the inauguration, but there is a banquet and most importantly, a ball. So when you are invited to the ball, you are considered
a VIP.
And who's invited so far, reportedly?
Well, the very first name that really pops into my head is Yong-jin. He is the CEO of Shinsegae. Shinsegae is the large conglomerate that is in charge of E-Mart, which is the South Korean version of Walmart here. He was invited personally by Donald Trump Jr., the president-elect's eldest son. Now,
and a close aide, like Kim Yo-jong to Kim Jong-un.
Chung Yong-jin is not known, he's known for some of his more controversial statements. He very much hates communists. In fact, I believe the word communist is a rather neutral term that he would not typically use. But he was invited to the inauguration.
And the ball.
Reportedly.
And it seems like he is so far the only person who was invited to the ball. So the South Korean media headline has been all focused on that when it comes to business news. There are a few others, like the head of SM Group, the entertainment industry, the head of SPC Group, which is a Paris Baguette owner company, and some others as well. We will probably hear more throughout the week next week.
And all of this information will be sent to your email inbox by Monday via the Week Ahead newsletter. So if you'd like to know more, please subscribe. Have a good weekend, everyone.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jungmin Kim.
And I'm John Lay. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.